Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 2 to 4 player game, Avatar The Last Airbender, Aang's Destiny, designed by Pat Marino and published by The Op, who helped sponsor this video. Here, the world is divided into 4 nations, each representing one of nature's elements: air, water, fire, and earth. But the Fire Nation wants to conquer them all, so you and your fellow heroes must fight back and restore balance. Set in the world of the popular Avatar The Last Airbender series, this game contains 7 secret boxes. Play and defeat the contents of the first to unlock the next, with each introducing new rules and challenges as you work to fulfill your destiny and save the world. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to play your first game using Box 1. Then at the end, I'll give you a brief overview of the new concepts introduced in Box 2 and 3, if you'd like to get a sense of how the game evolves as you play. Or you can skip that section if you want to avoid spoilers. Once you've played and completed all 7 of the boxes in the game, the contents can be fully reset to take on the challenges again, perhaps with new characters or new players. But with that understood, join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, put this game board in the center of the play area. Then create a supply of these purpose, attack, health, and bending tokens, which come in 4 types: air, water, fire, and earth. Now give each player one of these boards, where they'll set a health token onto the 10 space here. We'll assume we have 2 players in this video, returning the other boards back to the box. Now collect box 1, leaving boxes 2 through 7 and these dividers behind. We won't need those for the first game. When you open a box, it will contain a variety of components, often in separate sleeves, and we'll use these to set up our first game in a moment. But notice the cards each have numbers printed in their bottom left-hand corner with this box symbol. This tells you which games they are to be included in. For example, these include the value 2 within their ranges, so when you open and play box 2 later, you'll include these cards as well. But notice this card only shows the number 1. That means you won't use it when playing box 2 or any of the other boxes. And we'll see how you remove and organize cards between sessions later, but I just wanted to point out those useful codes. From box 1, collect the Fire Nation cards, which have this back, shuffling and setting them face down here. Then collect the Adversary cards, which have this back, shuffling and setting them face down here. Draw the top one and add it face up to this space. There's a second space for adversaries, but you won't use this in your first game. The cards with this back are the Fire Nation tracking cards. When face up and arranged correctly, they form a complete map which you add to these spaces of the board, setting this ship token onto the number 1 space here. To make it easier to see in this video, I'll remove its stand and lay it down. You'll find a group of 14 cards that have these 2 styles of backs. Going through these by their fronts, you'll find that some have a value in their corner with a decimal, like this, 1.1 and 1.2, while others have a star symbol with a value, 1, 2, and so on. Do not shuffle this deck. These are already in a specific order. Just be aware, in the first printing of the game, these were accidentally shipped in reverse order, so I'm going to reverse their order again to get them into the correct order. You then set this deck face down into the space for it here, dealing the first card face up, which, if they're now ordered correctly, will be this one, numbered 1.1. You're going to find a lot of cards with this back, but they come in various types that we'll need to organize by their fronts. Any with a name in this bottom central area here, you'll set aside for now. Go through the rest and find any with the keyword bending printed here and separate them into 2 piles based on their colored borders of blue and yellow, representing water and air. The others are made up of cards labeled as allies and items, and in later games these will also contain actions. You'll now shuffle all 3 of these decks separately. Set the air and water bending decks face up here and here, then deal the first card from each into the spaces below them. If the visible card in a top space ever matches the card below it, like we see here, deal that card into the space below as well until each space here shows a unique card. And you'll do this anytime duplicates are visible here anytime during the game. The shuffled allies and item deck you'll set face down into this space, dealing cards from it face up into each of these 4 spaces. If you ever deal duplicates, stack them together into the same space and then continue drawing until all 4 of the face-up cards are unique. And again, you'll do this anytime duplicates would be visible here anytime during the game. Next, each player picks one of these 4 included heroes, putting it above their player board into position here, returning any leftovers back to the box. They also each collect a turn reference, which they can set here. Your hero may list some bending skills here. For example, Aang has both airbending and waterbending. If so, add the bending tokens that match those types to the related icons showing on your hero board here. So air and water bending for Aang, while Katara only has water bending, so she'd only receive 1 token. Earlier, we had set aside cards that showed names here at their bottoms. Each player now collects the 10 cards showing their hero's name, returning any others back to the box. Shuffle your related deck and then set it face down into the area for it here, and then draw from it 5 cards. You can keep your cards in your hand during the game, but they're not considered a secret. You can show them to the other players or even keep them face up in front of you. The choice is up to you. And that's the setup. In Avatar The Last Airbender, Aang's Destiny, you and the other players will be working together to defeat all of the adversaries and complete all of the objectives in their related decks before this Fire Nation ship reaches the last space of the map. The game is played over a series of turns, starting with someone you pick randomly and then going clockwise around and around the table. And on your turn, you'll follow 5 steps. You'll find these listed on your reference card, so let's go through them, starting with revealing and resolving Fire Nation cards. Here, you check these tracking cards to see which space the Fire Nation ship is currently located on. Then you compare that to the instructions at the bottom of these cards. This symbol represents Fire Nation cards. So these instructions tell you how many to now draw and resolve based on the space the ship is on. So in our case, just 1. Whatever the number, now draw and resolve that many one at a time from this deck, setting them face up here. This is the symbol for the ship on the tracking cards, which means we now advance the ship 2 spaces. So we would move the ship from here to here. As an aside, if you need a reminder of what the various icons in the game represent, you'll find them shown here on the back of the rulebook. Now, I should mention, the number of Fire Nation cards you draw and resolve during this step is based on where the ship was at the start of your turn. In other words, if it had been here at the start of a turn, and we had drawn this card, advancing the ship to now be within this range here, we still only draw and resolve 1 card this turn. If the ship is still here at the start of the next player's turn, then 2 cards would be drawn and resolved. As the game goes on and more cards are drawn, set them on top of any previously revealed ones. And if you ever run out of cards to draw, shuffle all the ones here into a new draw deck and then keep drawing as necessary. Now though, we move to the Resolve Adversary abilities step of a turn. Here, you resolve the effect showing in this area of the face-up adversary. Some, like this one, have an effect that always resolves. This is the symbol for health, so in this case we're told the active hero loses 1 health. When the game refers to the active player, it means the one taking their turn. If it was my turn and I was controlling Aang, I'd move his health marker, and when you lose health, you move your marker in this direction. Sometimes the adversary has an effect that only resolves when something specific happens in the game. For example, if Prince Zuko was the current adversary, his ability causes the active hero to lose 2 health every time an effect adds any number to tracking. So that means if he had been the face-up adversary when this card resolved, since its effect added tracking, the active hero would have then also lost 2 health. With the adversary's ability resolved, if required, you now go to the Review Objective Effects step of your turn. However, none of the objectives in the first game will have objective effects, so we can skip this step. Instead, we move right to the Play Support Cards and Take Hero Actions step. There are 4 different types of actions you can perform, and you can perform them in any order as often as you like during this step. So let's go through each action, starting with playing a card. Here, you play a card from your hand face up in front of you, resolving its effect. If you're playing with your hand of cards already face up on the table, then when you play a card, just set it in a played area separate from the others. Either way, after playing a card, you resolve its effect. The effect will be shown in its bottom half, and this is the symbol for purpose. So playing this means we gain 1 purpose token. When you gain purpose tokens, take them from the supply and add them to this area of your player board. Sometimes an effect will give you a choice. Here you either gain 1 health or one of these attack tokens from the supply. When you gain health, move your health token in this direction on your board. Any health you would gain while your marker is already at the highest position is ignored. If we had instead gained an attack token, we'd collect it from the supply and add it to this area of our board. When playing Helping Hand, you either play it to gain 1 purpose token or remove it from play to gain 3 purpose tokens instead. Anytime you're instructed to remove a card from play or from the game, it will no longer be available for you to use, so just place it somewhere outside the play area. Sometimes a card will have multiple effects divided by lines. You don't make a choice here, but instead get to resolve all of them. That said, sometimes an effect doesn't happen right away. For example, if we played this card, we would gain a purpose token right away, but its second effect shows this discard symbol. And it says, if you discard this Water Tribe necklace card, you gain 2 more purpose tokens. The important thing to know is that you can't simply choose to discard this card to gain its effect. A different effect must force you to discard it. This Fire Nation card says that the active hero must lose 1 health and discard 1 card. If we had this card in our hand or had already played it in front of us, we could pick to discard it for this requirement. And then its effect here resolves, and we would take 2 purpose tokens. Anytime you discard, place the related card face up into your discard area here. So again, if a card has an effect that resolves when it's discarded, you can't simply choose to discard it to gain that effect. It must be discarded by another effect that causes you to discard it. Then you can resolve its related discard effect. Here's an effect that shows the draw 1 card symbol. When played, it says you pick any 1 hero to draw a card, which could be yourself. When drawing a card, you take it from your deck here and add it to your hand. We're not going to go through all the cards in this video, as how they work is explained on them, but what I've shown you so far should give you a good sense of how they work. So, playing cards is one type of action you can take on your turn. Another is assigning attack tokens to adversaries. To do this, take any number that you currently have stored here on your player board and move them to the face-up adversary here. When the number of attack tokens on an adversary equals its hit points value here, also known as HP, it has been defeated. You then immediately resolve any reward it has printed here. In this case, we subtract 2 from the fire ship's current tracking. So we'd move it backwards 2 spaces like this. The ship can never be moved backwards past the first space, so ignore any effect that tries to. After gaining the reward, move the attack tokens from the defeated adversary and then place it into a discard pile beside the board, but do not replace it. Another action you can perform on your turn is to assign resources to the current objective and possibly complete it. The current objective will be displayed here, showing its requirements in this area, which in this case is 1 purpose and 1 attack token. On your turn, you can assign any required tokens from your player board to the objective as you like. So I could add 1 attack token, even if I didn't have or didn't want to assign a purpose token yet. Tokens assigned to an objective will stay there until the objective's requirements are complete. So if I don't complete them on my turn, maybe another player will on their turn. Let's assume I did complete this objective. With its requirements met, you immediately gain its reward listed here, if any. Then you return any tokens on it back to the supply and remove it, setting it aside, but do not replace it with a new one from the deck. Some objectives in later games will require specific actions along with adding tokens. And you must first assign all necessary tokens before completing its action requirements. So here, I'd have to already have 2 of these health tokens on the objective, and then I could discard a card to complete this objective, gain the reward, and remove it. Sometimes an objective reward will provide you with reward cards. These will be the next ones on the objective deck. So when you complete that type of objective, immediately draw those rewards from the deck and assign them as instructed. For example, this says Appa gains reward card 1 and Aang gains reward card 2. As we draw these 2 cards, you'll notice in their bottom corner a star symbol. That's the reward icon. So we can confirm that these are reward 1 and reward 2 by the symbols and values in their corner. When a hero gains a card, it's added directly to their discard pile, and we'll see how that benefits them later. If a hero that's not in your game gains a reward with their name at the bottom, store it with their other cards in the box. In this way, if you or another player decide to be that hero in a future game, you'll now have those reward cards to use. Sometimes an objective requires heart tokens. You don't add these by taking health from your hero. Instead, if you play a card that normally provides a hero with hearts, you can instead choose to assign all of them to the objective as tokens. So I could play this card to add 2 health tokens to this objective and complete it. Just be aware some Fire Nation and Adversary cards will prevent players from gaining health. If so, you can't play cards like this to give health back to heroes or to place health on the objective. Speaking of health, we should take a moment here to learn what happens when a hero runs out of it. We saw effects can cause you to gain or lose health, and unless they say otherwise, they are always referring to the active player. If your health is ever reduced to 0, you are immediately stunned and resolve 6 steps, which you're reminded of down here. First, you'll ignore any effects that would change the hero's health for the rest of the current turn. So if we played this card, we could not choose this top effect. However, you can still use cards that would gain health if you're assigning them to an objective. When stunned, you also lose all of the purpose and attack tokens currently on your player board, so return those to the supply. You also discard half of the cards still in your hand, rounding down, not counting any you have played so far this turn. So if I had 3 in hand, I'd pick one of them to discard. And be aware, if a card you discard this way has a discard effect, you do get to resolve it. Either way, when stunned, you also advance the Fire Nation ship 1 space on the track. If you were stunned on your own turn, you may still play cards and take actions with whatever you have remaining at that point. Then at the end of the current player's turn, the stunned hero's health is reset to 10. This happens even if you were stunned on another player's turn. At the end of their turn, your hero will recover to 10 health. If more than one hero is stunned at the same time, each of them will complete the steps we just learned. Okay, we took a little break to learn about what happens when you run out of health, but now let's go back to explaining the actions you can take during this 4th step of your turn and explain the final type of action you can perform, acquiring new support cards. All the cards in this area are known as supports. These spaces have bending supports, and these spaces have general supports. You're allowed to acquire any face-up card you see as long as you pay its cost in purpose tokens, which is shown here in its bottom right-hand corner. Just return that number of tokens from your board back to the supply, and then take the card. When you gain a card, it goes directly into your discard pile, where it will help you later, as we'll see. That said, notice the effect on this card in Aang's deck. Along with providing 1 progress token, it says that if I had played this on my turn, any bending cards that I acquire may be put on top of my deck instead of my discard pile. So that would mean I would add cards I acquire after playing this card that have this bending keyword face down onto the top of my deck instead of putting them into my discard pile. And be aware, when you acquire cards from the board, you do not replace them. Cards you acquire will often be stronger than the ones you began the game with, so gaining new cards is essential to a winning strategy. I should point out, cards with this bending keyword are special. Any player can acquire them, and when played, you always resolve effects it shows as long as those effects don't have an element icon to their left. So Katara would gain 2 purpose tokens when playing this. But to resolve its other effect, which shows the air element symbol here, she'd need to have an air element token on her player board in this area, and she doesn't, so she'd ignore this effect. If Aang had been playing this card, his hero does have the air element token, so he'd gain both 2 purpose and 2 attack tokens. Alright, after a player has played as many cards and taken as many actions as they can or wish to, it's their end of turn step. First, check the adversary space. If there's a card here, nothing happens, and any tokens it has on it stay there. However, if you had defeated the adversary during your turn, fill the empty space with the next one from the deck. That said, if the space was empty and there were no adversaries left, you no longer draw them during this step, which is good, as we'll see. Now check the objective area. If an objective is still in this space, nothing happens. You leave the current card there with any tokens it has on it. However, if you had completed the objective during your turn, fill its empty space with the next card from the deck. If you would ever need to draw an objective but the deck is empty, you won't draw any more. Next, if there are any empty spaces in the bending support area, draw new ones from the related deck to fill them. These bending spaces will remain empty during the first game, but when you're playing later games, there may be cards to refill them as well. If there are any spaces open in this general support area, refill them with cards from this deck. And remember, if there's ever more than 1 copy of the same card showing, stack them together and continue drawing as necessary. If the bending or general support decks ever run out, you'll have no new cards to draw from them to refill the related spaces, and that's okay. At the end of your turn, you also move all the cards you played this turn and any still in your hand to your discard pile. You cannot save unplayed cards for your next turn. Be aware, when you discard at the end of your turn, this does not trigger any discard effects. Also return to the supply any unused purpose and attack tokens you still have. So you'll want to use these during your turn if you can. Now that said, if effects you had resolved on your turn caused other players to gain purpose or attack tokens, they get to keep them for use on their turn. Finally, you draw a new hand of 5 cards from your deck. Now, if at any point during the game your deck runs out, when you would need to draw more, pause and shuffle your discard pile into a new deck, and then continue drawing any cards you're still owed. In this way, cards you had played previously and ones you acquired into your discard pile eventually end up in your deck to draw later. Either way, once you have your new hand of 5 cards, the next player in clockwise order takes their turn as the active hero, and turns will continue like this until the game ends in one of 2 possible ways. If the fire ship ever reaches the game over space of the tracking path cards, the enemies have captured the avatar and the players immediately all lose. If this happens, you need to practice your bending and fighting skills more, so don't advance to box 2 yet. Instead, reset the game and try box 1 again. However, if the players have defeated all the adversaries and completed all the objectives, the heroes all win. You're then ready to open box 2 and begin the next part of the adventure. You can always stop between games, storing all the cards you've revealed so far back in the box using these included dividers to make things easy to sort and set up the next time you play. Whether you're starting a new box or replaying an old one, always return any cards you acquired during the game back to their related support decks, unless they have your hero's name at the bottom here. You always start each new game with those cards when playing that character. Also, some cards you played with previously will expire. If a card doesn't show the box symbol with a value or range of values that includes the next box you're playing, it is expired and removed from the game. You'll store expired cards in the box behind this expired cards divider. As I mentioned at the start of this video, I'm not going to teach the rules for the future boxes, but let me give you a brief preview of what's coming in the next 2 boxes so you can see the ways in which this game will change as you play. Now, if you'd prefer to avoid all spoilers, you can just stop watching here, and if so, thanks for watching. But otherwise, let's continue. When you open a new box, you'll get new components to use, like new adversaries, Fire Nation cards, objectives, supports, and rewards, and a rule sheet you'll want to read over. This will give you an overview of the new components the box introduces, how to bring them into future games, and which cards should be expired from play. On this side, you'll learn about a new rule in box 2 that now occurs when you acquire a bending ally. Bending allies are ones labeled as an ally with one of the 4 elements shown in their corner here. When you acquire one of these, you can put it into your discard pile as usual, or instead add it to the area here if you don't already have a token of its type in that area. With the ally here, you now put a matching token of its type into your reserve as well, and from now on, you'll be able to resolve effects of that type on cards that you play. These rules will further explain other details about that and anything else you need to know, but that should give you a quick taste of what's to come in box 2. In box 3, you'll gain new components and new rules to look over. A new twist here is that you'll now use both adversary spaces. This means you'll have 2 face-up in these spaces, and their effects will resolve at the start of each turn, and you can assign tokens to either or both. The rest of the surprises in these and the other boxes I'll leave for you to discover on your own. I will mention, although the game doesn't have solo rules, you can play solo by picking any 2 or more heroes to control, taking turns with each of them in order. But no matter your player count, if you complete all 7 boxes, congratulations, you've won the full adventure. You can now fully reset and play again using new heroes or new players, or replay box 7 to revisit the most challenging aspects of the game. But otherwise, that's everything you need to know to play Avatar The Last Airbender, Aang's Destiny. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.